Imagine a future where India stands as an undeniable global superpower, an economic juggernaut, and a technological pioneer. But there's one simple catch. What if I told you that all of that, the progress that India makes in the future, comes at a cost? And the cost is how many number of hours you're willing to put in. And to be specific, are you willing to put in 70 hours every single week for India to grow and prosper as a nation? Now, last year, Narayana Murthy, who is a billionaire co-founder of Infosys, in an interview, he went on and said that Indian youth needs to work 70 hours every single week in order for India to grow and succeed as a country. But here are some questions that we need to first understand. How do we calculate productivity? Is the number of hours that we're putting in actually a measure of work productivity? Are we even compensated or incentivized for the number of hours that we're putting in at work? And what about work-life balance? What about the toxic work environment? We are going to answer all of these questions in this video here. So if you're new to our channel, please subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss any new videos. Alright, so now let's jump right into it. In an interview last year, Narayana Murthy said that Indians, specifically Indian youth, needs to work in 70 hours every single week for India to grow and develop. And to add on, he said that India has one of the lowest work productivities in the world. So the question over here is that what does work productivity in India look like? Now, as per the International Labour Organization's data of 2023, this is the most recent data. It said that Indians are on an average working 47.7 hours, roughly 48 hours every single week. Now, which is already higher than what Americans put in. The number of hours that Americans are putting in is roughly 34.3 hours. And when we compare that to the Germans, that comes out to be 36 to 40 hours every single week. So Indians are already working more than the American or the German counterparts. And also when Indians are working, they're putting in more than 10 hours every single working day. So we are already working more than Americans or Germans on an average, where many of us are putting in more than 10 hours of work every single working day whenever we are working. And yet our work productivity is low. So it is clearly not an issue of the number of hours that we are willing to put in. And in fact, when we look at the Indian diaspora in America, in the US, Indian Americans are the highest earning ethnicity in America, with an average income of roughly about $120,000 every single year. That is the most amount of money that any ethnicity makes in America. So that is simply not a question of how hardworking we are. So then what are the issues? How is our productivity low? When we look at Indians working, a huge part of our population is employed in the unorganized sector. Majority of Indians are actually working in the unorganized sector. Around 90% of Indians are actually employed in the unorganized sector with no job security or no work benefits. So obviously, the productivity of Indians is actually going to be low. Out of the 140 crore population of Indians, about 60 crore people are working, out of which 54 crore people, they are employed in the unorganized sector, with only 6 crore people working in the organized sector. And in addition to the previous point, Indians also lack skills. We are lacking skills, and that is why most of us are actually not working in the organized sector. We don't have the skills of working in the organized sector. So that is also a major reason, a significant reason for our productivity actually being low. And while we're talking about working 70 hours a week, let us also talk about the number of unpaid hours that we're putting in. And by that, I simply mean how many hours of work we're putting in, how many hours are we working overtime without getting any pay. Now, as of 2021, employees in India, they believe that they were working 11 hours every single week overtime without getting any pay, without getting compensated for the number of hours they were putting in. And if we go by the Indian Factories Act of 1948, every single working hour that Indian workers specifically are putting in extra, they need to be paid twice as much for every single extra working hour. But here's the catch, that only applies to factory workers. That does not apply to employees that are working in MNCs or the corporate world or the organized sector. And this is how the MNCs and the corporate world actually exploits employees, because there are no stricter laws or rules on extra working hours. We are already working in more hours, and this is why those working in the organized sector, they are not paid for overtime work. And another issue over here is that Indians, they are not getting paid on hourly basis in the organized sector. When we look at the US, many workers, many employees in the US in the organized sector, they are also paid on hourly basis, which is not the case in India. It is harder to measure productivity, or it is harder to measure the number of hours that we are putting in and how much amount of money we should be compensated for it. That is still a matrix that could be used in Indian context if Indians were being paid on an hourly basis. Specifically specifically in the organized sector. Talking about Infosys, when we look at the average salary or average package of a fresher at Infosys, it is roughly about 4 lakh per annum. And 10 years ago in 2014, this package was roughly about 3 to 3.5 lakh per annum. So that has not increased much, about 50,000 to 1 lakh rupees in a decade. Whereas when we look at inflation has grown to levels that the average salary that is being paid to a fresher today does not match up as compared to 10 years ago. And here's the deal. We're talking about freshers, right? We can argue that, while companies like Infosys, they're paying nearly about 9% hike every single year. They're increasing the salary of their employees by 9%, but they've not really focused on increasing the pay of freshers. It is more or less the same as it was 10 years ago. But inflation does not care about what freshers are being paid today. The reason why it matters is because rents, they have increased in the last 10 years. Transportation costs, they have increased. Groceries, they're more expensive today than they were 10 years ago. So all of these things, these expenses, they do not care whether you're a fresher or you're an experienced employee. It does not matter to inflation. It is still increasing. So that is why it is important for companies to also look at what they're paying to their freshers. On top of that, many of these freshers, they're also required to move to tier 1 cities like Delhi, Mumbai, or Bangalore. They're expected to relocate to these cities where the living expenses, they're already higher than what they would be in a tier 2 or tier 3 city, with little or nothing left for these freshers to actually save. The only good thing about COVID that happened was that employees, they were allowed to work from home, which actually saved up a lot of their expenses, which would have otherwise been spent on rent or transportation costs. But apparently these companies, they believe that visibility at workplace is an important factor of work productivity, and we're going to talk about that in a minute over here, which is why a lot of employees, they are also now expected to return to work. And I'm not saying that employees should not go back to work, because a lot of these jobs or roles, they require for employees to actually be at work at their office desk. But many of these jobs, they can also be completed while employees are working from home. Now let us also look at how these companies, they actually calculate work productivity of an employee. So as per a study by Slack in 2023, and this is not just limited to Indians but on a global scale, 27% of executives measured productivity based on visibility and activity, meaning showing up at work or being online at your laptop or computer. 19% focused on achieving key performance indicators, whereas 15% focus on cost matrix. On the other hand, when we look at the response of employees believe that their work productivity would increase if they were given more flexibility at work, and also believe that one of the reasons for their low productivity was actually attending meetings. A lot of meetings, they're unproductive. So executives and employees, they're obviously not on the same page when it comes to measuring productivity. Now, when we look at visibility as an indicator, it does not guarantee work productivity, because you can be at work for 8 hours and still not get the work done. Yet another reason for employees' productivity is technological advancements. Specifically in the Indian context, we are lagging behind because we are not as technologically advanced as the Western counterparts or the developed countries like Japan or South Korea. Although India is making progress, we are still not there yet. And with advancements in AI, we need to make sure that we are able to keep up with the developments that are taking place right now. But then when we look at the most important part of work productivity for an employee, that comes down to compensation. And on top of this list is income. Are we paid enough to be able to work extra time? Definitely we are not, right? As I mentioned earlier, we are working more hours, even working overtime, but we are not getting paid. Why would Indians want to work 70 hours when they are only getting paid for 40 hours every single week? And on top of that, this also has to do with the toxic work culture. And recently a case came to light wherein a Pune-based employee actually lost her life because of toxic work environment. She was given hours and hours of work as per the convenience of a manager, which she had to get done, and that resulted in her losing life. And that is just one of the many cases that do not come to light. Toxic work environment, toxic work culture, this culture of putting in a lot of burden on employees, specifically new employees, that actually does more harm than good, because they are not compensated enough. And in the name of success and opportunities and growth or job promotion, they're working overtime, they're exhausting themselves, their mental health is deteriorating, their physical health is also deteriorating. So how do we expect employees to give their 100% if they are not compensated. Their mental and physical health are at stake when they're working overtime. Their managers or higher ups, supervisors, they are not looking after their employees. We cannot expect employees to work or put in efforts where their efforts are not being appreciated or reciprocated. Why should an employee work that many hours when he or she is not getting compensated enough or not even appreciated for the efforts that they are putting in? On top of that, not every employee has the same goals as the company. Every employee is different. Yes, many employees, they're ambitious, they want growth, but not every single employee is that way. Many of these employees, they just want to have a work-life balance. People are not going to work in 70 hours a week, and if they are willing to put in 70 hours a week, many of them are better off if they are working for themselves, because at least if they succeed, they know that they are going to reap all the benefits of actually putting in the work, of actually focusing on their growth, as compared to working for someone else who is not even going to appreciate. And these companies, they don't even care. They already have a replacement for you if you were to resign tomorrow. So why should they commit their loyalty and working capacity to a company which does not take care of them? So if you're a business owner and startup founder, you need to work 70 hours a week, even more, depending on the industry that you're working in. But for an employee, that is a stretch. Even when it comes down to young employees, do they really want to work 70 hours a week? That is one question that we need to focus on. And when we look at the development of this country, that can only happen when employees are also taken care of, when these companies, they're not exploiting these employees. With that being said, what do you think about working 70 hours a week? Should Indians work 70 hours a week? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you found this video valuable, please share this video with your friends and family, and please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching this video and have a great day.